Hi everyone, today we'll bring you through how COVID-19 has affected India. We'll start with its background information, followed by causes, consequences of the problem, and finally, how it has impacted India's economy. During the first wave of COVID-19, India faced relatively few reported cases compared to other countries. This could have been because of the lack of widespread testing or because of the majority of the population falling below the age of 25. Young people are more likely to have asymptomatic infections, which could have led to confirmed COVID-19 cases going undetected. By December 2020, case numbers had fallen and life in India continued normally with minimal restrictions set in place. This also led to a quick return to normalcy due to the pent-up demand and festive shopping.
However, several factors resulted in an exponential surge in cases. One reason was the relaxed attitude people adopted towards measures designed to combat the virus. Many people stopped wearing masks following India's initial success during the first wave of COVID-19. Additionally, there were several crowded gatherings, including huge political rallies, which were super-spreader events. Another reason was due to the lack of maintenance and reinforcements of resources to fight the pandemic. Hospitals were taking down COVID-19 wards, testing centers were dismantled, and new oxygen plants were never built. Furthermore, India's vaccination program lagged behind, with daily vaccination rates being stuck between 2 to 2.5 million. Lastly, the circulation of highly contagious variants, such as the Alpha, Beta, and Delta variants, may have exacerbated the COVID-19 crisis, as they were more transmissible than other strains at the time.
This has consequently impacted the aviation and tourism, pharmaceuticals, and agriculture sectors in India. The contribution of the aviation sector and tourism to India's GDP stands at about 2.4% and 9.2% respectively. Both were the first industries that were hit significantly by the pandemic, and they were expected to be hit harder than 9/11 and the financial crisis of 2008 due to the rapidly globalized world we live in today. The pandemic caused a huge decrease in the number of tourists and thus the tourist spending, coupled with the minimal number of flights due to the decreased flight demand. Consequently, these two industries had to do with severe cash flow issues as the export decreased significantly. India is now staring at a potential 38 million layoffs, which translates to 70% of the total workforce. These industries may incur losses of about 85 billion rupees due to travel restrictions. High unemployment rate and decreased GDP not only resulted in a fall in India's real national income, it also caused the material standard of living to decrease as GDP per capita decreased, and it led to less purchasing power. It also caused the non-material standard of living to decrease as availability to healthcare resources were not abundant. On the other hand, the pharmaceutical industry was also hit by cost-push inflation due to the rise in prices of raw materials imported from China as the imports were disrupted. Generic drugs were the most impacted due to heavy reliance on imports, disrupted supply chain, and labor unavailability in the industry. At the same time, the pharmaceutical industry struggled because of the government-imposed bans on the export of critical drugs, equipment, and PPE kits to ensure sufficient quantities for the country. The increased demand for these drugs, coupled with the rising cost of raw materials, negatively impacted the pharmaceutical industry. Tax relaxation for businesses and addressing the shortage in labor could ease the financial stress on pharmaceutical companies amidst the turbulent economy. Lastly, demand for agricultural commodities plunged due to the shutdown of international trade. Farmers struggled to bring produce to market yards because of transport facilities being unavailable and restrictions on movement of goods. Online food grocery platforms were significantly impacted due to unclear restrictions on movements and stoppage of logistics vehicles.
Now, on to the aggregate demand. There is an overall decrease in India's aggregate demand. The reason for this is due to consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, and net exports. Now, going on to consumption expenditure, the reason for the decrease is because people want to spend less so as to save money in the event of an emergency, and also they start to go out less often. The reason for the decrease in the investment expenditure is due to the poor business outlook, whereby investors are not very confident in investing, and thus resulting in the decrease. Lastly, the decrease in the net exports is likely due to the fact that there's negative economic growth, and therefore as a result causing other currencies to appear to be more expensive, hence driving the decrease in exports revenue and imports expenditure. All in all, there's an overall decrease in the aggregate demand.
I will now be presenting on the impact on AS. There is a decrease in SRAS due to the increased cost of production. This is caused by two factors. Firstly, upon the COVID-19 pandemic, rising prices of factors of production led to higher production costs, causing an overall decrease in the SRAS. Furthermore, more workers getting sick led to a decrease in production level. As a result, firms will experience less efficient labor, leading to unproductive labor. Possibly, wages could decrease faster than the decrease in labor productivity, resulting in higher unit labor cost of production. This will contribute to the decrease in SRAS, which is represented by the upward shift in the curve. Next, there will be a fall in LRAS caused by two factors. Firstly, fall in investments reduces capital accumulation, decreasing the productive capacity of India's economy. Thus, India will also experience a fall in long-run aggregate supply. This is represented by a leftward shift of the LRAS curve. Furthermore, lesser quantity of factors of production will cause productive capacity to also decrease, decreasing the LRAS. Overall, upward shift in SRAS and leftward shift in LRAS will cause the entire AS curve to shift left. This results in a fall in real GDP and higher general price level GPL. The fall in AD and fall in AS will cause real GDP to definitely fall. However, GPL will be indeterminate depending on the extent of change in AD and AS. Lastly, we will be presenting on how the following indicators will be affected.
Now, on to the indicators. First will be the GDP growth rate. There is an overall decrease from 2016 to 2019, and this decrease was more significant upon COVID-19. The reason for this is because firms no longer have the interest to invest, and also because consumers have little income and therefore little purchasing power. Thus, this drives the GDP growth rate down. Next, on to the unemployment rate. The decrease in the unemployment rate was seen in 2016 to 2019, but it rose when COVID-19 hit. The likely reason is due to the decrease in production, and thus, as labor is of derived demand as compared to the production, factors of production, this has resulted in the fall in labor, and overall, there is a decrease in the unemployment rate.
From 2016 to 2019, the inflation rate had been already fluctuating. However, the pandemic worsened this in 2020. This depicts the continuously rising GPL, a result of the shortage of goods and services during the pandemic. For example, shortage of labor, oxygen, necessities has led to a surge in price for these goods. Food shortages and rising cost of factors of production has led to cost push inflation. Overall, the fall in AS exceeds the fall in AD, causing GPL to increase. Next, when the pandemic hit, there was a rapid decrease in GDP per capita. GDP per capita is calculated by dividing the real GDP by the population. As stated before, India's real GDP had taken a significant decrease. This is due to the large drop in consumer expenditure, as many had less disposable income and purchasing power due to unemployment and recession. Additionally, people also invested less as a result. Thus, this leads to a significant decrease in GDP. The population had also decreased due to the high death toll. However, the decrease in real GDP is much more than the decrease in population. Thus, overall, the GDP per capita has decreased due to the pandemic.